It's just easy to understand. There's typically 3 ingredients. Like in chicken, it's organic chicken, organic carrots, and water. I am amazed every single day. We are cash flowed 24 years ago from one single food truck that sold rotisserie chicken and potatoes. If you had to make a choice, fresh is always the best. Slotting fees are real. It's something that we aren't going to participate in. We think those dollars are probably meant better to funnel back to the end product to ensure quality, if not for more awareness for end consumers. I swear it's because of your bone broth, or like my hair's gotten thicker, but I have hair on my arms a lot more. Like, trust me, like it's because of your product. It's not just what you achieve, but how you go about it, and that matters to me.
Thank you for coming on the show.
Yep, glad to be here.
So for anyone who hasn't heard the first episode that we had with Butcher's Bone Broth, can you give us like a 60-second version of what Butcher's is?
Yeah, Butcher's is the #1 bone broth in the fresh refrigerated space. So that basically means like most of the bone broth that everybody knows of is in the center of the aisle, shelf stable, ambient. We do things a lot differently, partly because of what Thomas, our founder, did, who's a 3rd generation Swiss butcher. We made a fresh bone broth that's really jiggly. So when you pour it out, it literally rolls out like Jello, right? And that's all the great gelatin and collagen there. So we think we're recreating a new category called fresh bone broth, because if you go into many stores across America, it's hard to even know where we sit. Sometimes we're in a refrigerated meat set. Sometimes we're in what's called in the fresh and convenient set at Whole Foods. And then Hy-Vee, I'm pretty excited. We're going to be in the probiotics, gut and health and wellness set, which is the first time that we'll be sitting in that.
That makes perfect sense too.
It does. It's fascinating to me because, when Tom started the business and certainly with our bone broth, I think the initial thesis was, like at the time, 9 years ago, people are going to use bone broth majorly for cooking. But what we found is there's a dramatic increase in people utilizing bone broth as a sipping regimen of some sorts. So that's
just pointing.
Do you do it in the morning or do you do it in the evening?
I do it in the morning. I do, ever since I came across Butcher's Bone Broth too, I always use Butcher's. I love it.
Yep.
And so I love seeing it getting into all these stores because it's just more convenient. I love the turmeric ginger one.
Yeah, it's amazing, right? It's also our favorite here at our household. If you put it, you can sip it, or if you want, you can just cook it with rice as well. That's like a subtle flavor. That's pretty cool. But we've gotten a lot of compliments to it.
I think we've got maybe 4 bottles in our refrigerator right now.
Yeah.
So we keep it stocked. The kids love it too.
Yeah. I know, it was funny because we were, we try and get, like, when possible, we try and get everything from a farm, but bone broth is really hard and you have to make it. It takes forever. And so when we had talked, I was like, little does Thomas know, he just totally reeled us in as like a very loyal customer, because when I tried it and it was like the jiggle. And I was like, this is solid, because no other bone broth is like that. Any of the shelf stable ones, they're not jiggly. And whenever I have made bone broth, which is like twice, I have to make sure I have like the jiggle. So
exactly.
I love seeing,
and the jiggle rater on the website, you had the amount of jiggle, I think, for each kind. I love that.
It's amazing, right? Just like, I don't know. I think about CPG products and, I came from tech, and tech in some ways, depending on what side, B2B or the B2C side, it could be complex or not. I think food, it's simple to understand, but in many ways, the science behind it, it's kind of complex. Like Thomas always says, we want to understand our broth better than it knows us. And it's so true, because there's a science behind how do you make a great product without putting tons of stuff in it. And part of that means being really wise of different components of products, of even the raw materials in, but then how do you even process in a way that provides like a great end Jello product, right? That people understand.
Right. Especially in the refrigerated section. I love that you guys don't have all these preservatives, because that's when it can get tricky, because you don't want to have all that added stuff. So it's really cool that you guys just have really clean ingredients.
Yeah. My rule of thumb is, if my kid, well, I can't say my kids because only one of my kids can read, but if mine can read it in the back and just have like, look at our fingers and these are the ingredients, I mean, typically that's a really good thing.
That's a great rule. I love that.
It's a really good rule. We got to keep that in mind, because we're teaching our 5-year-old about ingredients. And so that's something good to keep in mind.
Yeah. Well, hey, I'm going to back up a little bit if that's okay. So recently you got into Target. Congratulations.
Thank
you. It was like 175 stores, I think is what I read. Maybe it's grown since then.
Basically all the super centers right now.
Oh, super cool. And so personally, like what goes through your mind when you actually go in and you see the product on the shelf for the first time in like such a major retailer like that?
I think there's like big points of validation that kind of go to mind, right? I think like, hey, who doesn't know Target, right? I would say we're very fortunate in that we've had a series of big wins for the whole team. Costco was probably one of our earliest, which is weird because when you think about CPG brands, you typically like to think they grow regionally and whatnot before going to club. But Costco's been a pretty big part of our program, Whole Foods as well. So getting a Target means something really huge for us because that's kind of like mass retail. And we think the shopper demographic fits really well with our demographic. Someone who's trendy, millennial, might have some disposable income that is looking for healthy products. And yeah, with Target's revamp of their stores to kind of bringing a lot more innovative products through their sets, I'm pretty excited about how we're doing.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I am very excited. A lot of times I do Target pickup, and I went in Target a couple weeks, once in a while, if I, need a little break or something, I'll go and just stroll around Target. And I was shocked at all the clean brands that they're bringing in. I was very pleasantly surprised.
Yeah.
These are our movements heading in the right direction.
It is. I find that the movement is happening, and it's just happening at a pace where a lot of us want to move quicker. I'll be honest with you. Like, if you look at, I'm not sure how old you guys are, but I'm soon to be in my mid 40s, which basically means that I was born in the 80s ish. But I grew up on like cool things with like TV dinners, right? Or Pop-Tarts, like things that were like, oh, it's cool, it's kind of whatever. But if you unpeel layers, it's like, holy crap, that's like really pretty much unhealthy for you.
Yeah.
And then I think the last, dozen years or so, Thomas and I always talk about, it's like, hey, plant-based and cultivated meat, it's innovative, but I would say, I think consumers kind of looked and examined it even closer and just really questioned, like, what does it mean for their bodies outside environment? And the cool thing that we see that I think what you and your podcast and listeners are interested in is like, how can we get back to healthy by going back to natural, like things that aren't complex? And when you look and study, like I'm not sure if Thomas mentioned it, I'm pretty sure he did, but we make our own bone broth, right? It's like there's no co-man, there's no middleman. We know our suppliers, we go to their farms, like we're pretty vertically tied up. That allows us just to be a little more thoughtful of like this is how Thomas's mom made it and Thomas's grandma made it. And how do we do that at scale, but still do it in small batch manufacturing where it's really like you come in and you're like, hey, that's how I would make it at home.
Right. Yeah. That's actually one of the things that we wanted to ask you too is how do you navigate that without compromising on the ingredients or your sourcing or anything, just going from such a intimate, small brand that's so special with, like you said, like his mom and his grandma made that to being able to scale on such a large level like you guys are now.
Yeah, I think it's like if you ever walk to our factory, it's not like you'll never see these huge tanks that are like the size of reservoirs, right? Like you can imagine other bone broth brands where they fill it with water and they get a chicken wing and they weight it in there, and that's bone broth, right? Ours isn't. You go into ours, it's the size of I say a tank, but it's, I don't know, it's like a billboard size here, a whiteboard, or a couple, maybe a little bigger and whatnot. But we do it for several of them, and we make sure we have the right ingredients and the right, what we call SOPs, which is standard operating procedures. It's just basically like, it's basically how I would say like what grandma's recipe was, 50, 60 years, we don't deviate from that, right? Just so that we're maintaining the good quality that we would expect, at least our consumers would expect.
Right, right.
Yeah, I love that. And next question, I guess, would be when you go to Costco, Target, Whole Foods, do you get asked to change your ingredients or your packaging or your labeling or anything like that?
Yeah, all retailers do things differently. I think Whole Foods is probably the more progressive one in the industry, where they would seek to have, certain labels and certifications. I think it's great in some ways that it, leads the charge. I think it presents potential challenges for brands out there, especially emerging ones, right? Where you're managing different cost structures of having additional compliance. And it's interesting, right? When you look at what we do, which is bone broth that's fresh, if they look at us as another bone broth brand, they may not require something, but since we are fresh, maybe they look at us a little differently. So, it's all different from different retailers. I think one thing that plays in our favor is that it's just easy to understand. There's typically three ingredients. Like in chicken, it's organic chicken, organic carrots, and water, sourced from organic farms, and just to keep it super simple. So that's helped us a lot.
Oh,
Makes
that's
sense.
great. Yeah. Were there anything that surprised you in the whole process?
Which part?
In working with Target, I guess I could back up too and ask, how long is that process when you first started communicating with them to getting it actually on the shelves there? And then anything as part of that process that surprised you, like whether it's good or bad from Target side or any of the major retailers, really?
So, I always have to remind myself and ground myself, because when you come from the tech side, let's say you do e-commerce or an app, you can make some line changes, code changes, and you can basically have a new product on your website or app fairly quickly. I think one thing you realize with a physical product is that it takes time, and it takes time for it to kind of mature and to get customer response. We've been at Whole Foods probably for 5-6 years. We're in this awkward space called fresh and convenience, which if you shop there, it's kind of like there's some hummus there's some fresh noodles. It's basically like things they couldn't figure out, and they're like, we're just gonna put you in this set.
Sauerkraut in ours.
Yeah,
Exactly. So like it's hard for consumers to find out, but if you look at just velocities, I think I'm a big believer that people, when they find out eventually, if you could help them find it out, we just look at how we're doing in it. And I would say it's been pretty seismic and astronomical over the last year and a half. And part of me thinks, and this is a question, right? I think this is part of the movement that you guys are doing. Is it partly because there's a larger movement out there that it's more moving toward clean eating and realizing that's a direct impact to health, longevity, and quality? Or is that a combination of us doing a lot more awareness campaigns? And also because of that, is it because like people who shop at Whole Foods are now just discovering us, and therefore they're just increasing velocity? And that's what we're finding out, honestly, that on our side. I think we're getting people who purchase us regularly, especially sippers. Sippers are interesting. If you look at a category, for us, they purchase maybe 30% more likely per week than somebody who uses as a standard cooking ingredient. They use more year round as their health regimen, and certainly when you think about Whole Foods, that's the behavior that those consumers drive versus maybe a conventional store at, I don't know, Safeway, where people are using it more for cooking, perhaps.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah, totally. I know it's like I can't run out because, I'll buy like 3 bottles at once.
You start to view it as like a vitamin you take every day.
Yeah. Well,
And
it kind of is for your gut
Yeah,
health.
exactly.
Yeah, it's all that collagen, and I think people realize, like, I won't overkill you with collagen. Tom's always probably told you, like, talk your ear off on collagen, and over the time of like people's lives, they have more than they have less. But it's something that I grew up with. Like, if you look at Asian cultures, soup is a big part of it, right? And I would always have soup at every meal, and any leftovers, if you put in a refrigerator, it just jiggles the next day, right? That's when you know your mom put enough bones in there to make
Yeah.
it. So there's this trend that happened on TikTok. I'm not sure if you've seen it, about 3 months ago or 6 months ago, and then we fit in that trend because we got called out for it. It's kind of like this Asian baddie grandma, where you have all these habits that they do and whatever, but it's really contributed to their lifespan. And
Yeah.
bone broth was one of them. And check us out on TikTok or Instagram. We've gotten a decent following over the last couple months.
I love that. And even in another way that fits into is like how you mentioned earlier, cooking rice with bone broth too. So that's a great way even into the Asian culture. That's what I do too with my children, just because they won't drink bone broth really. So I sneak it in. I'll cook their rice or their pasta with it. Or hot chocolate. I love hot chocolate too.
It means something different. It's something I'm realizing. It means something different for different demographics, right? For your kids, like it's kind of like you're the caregiver who realizes, it's the protein, it's all the good stuff that they need for them to grow. There, you sneak it into ingredients. For a mom, it's like, shoot, this is great for my gut. It's great for my skin. I got to make part of my everyday regimen. And then the ones that I get through email every single week, there's some folks who have, the one that I always call out was like, you have this email from a daughter who's taking care of their like 60 or 70-year-old father who's 6'3", now weighed 130 pounds because he had cancer, had to amputate an arm. And the only thing that he could take was really our bone broth. And he drank like 3 bottles of our beef bone broth every day because that's the only thing that gave him the sustenance to survive. And in those stories, it's like, oh my God, it just means something so powerful for different levels of the society.
Absolutely. Just touching lives in a positive way. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I absolutely love that. We really enjoyed talking to Thomas and getting into a lot of those details when we last spoke with him. And I love the way you brought up the baddie grandmas, right? And we say this on just about every episode. Like if we have consistent listeners, I'm sure they're like, "Oh, Carl's going to say it again," but we're always aiming to like go back 60 years, right?
Yeah.
Like it's innovative in today's system, but it's like let's go back and simplify things, and that's what's actually best for us.
Yep.
That's what we love about what you guys are doing and some of the other brands that we speak to. Everybody's aligned in that mission.
Yeah. And I think like I don't know. I think there's just so much opportunity there. And not, I mean, I think there's opportunity there for consumers. It just makes their lives healthier. But, I think there's another side, which is I think there's very entrepreneurial people who are looking to join companies that are kind of mission driven. And, when Thomas and I met, and, we met at a time where I was working for Cliff Bar at the time. We got acquired by Mondelez. I was trying to figure out what to do next. I stumbled upon the opportunity with Thomas, and he's been working at Rolly Roti, started as a food truck for 24 years. And, then about 9 years ago, he started Butcher's Bone Broth, but, it takes a village in many ways to get the thing going. Right. So, I think there's tremendous opportunities for just people like, hey, if there's listeners out there that are kind of questioning, where do I spend my time in terms of like a career? And are there opportunities outside of big companies? I'm like, yeah, search for these great small brands, these mom and pops that are doing some really healthy, great things, doing the old style in many ways. And then how do you market it effectively? How do you produce it at scale so it impacts people at a larger scale, but at the same time provides you a way to make an impact that you're proud of? And I think it goes both to what I said. It helps the everyday consumer, but also this could be a great vehicle to help the next level of people who are looking to kind of create, I don't know, jobs for themselves.
Oh, absolutely. And that also, it just is a ripple effect on everything too. Like with people doing something that they believe in, and that kind of feels a little bit more personal with health does kind of for most people, anything in the health umbrella. So it's just like if that could be an option to make someone be doing something that they love and then bring happiness in different ways. So I love that too.
Totally.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
I thought about, I joined Cliff Bar about 2 years before the acquisition. And it was amazing because, as much external marketing the company had around like, the Cliff Bar itself, the great thing is that attracted people who cared about operating in a certain way. You attracted people who cared about sustainability, who were fairly outdoorsy or athletic, right? So you're, in many ways, it's like you're doing external marketing, but it translates to internal marketing in terms of who you attract around the table to kind of feel good about the mission you're working on, and then the end product to the people who consume it. So yeah, I'm hoping that we can achieve something similar at Butcher's over the next couple of years.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think you will.
I think it's you probably run across this, but you probably have to make a lot of decisions that are good for the mission, but maybe harder for the business, right? As you try to scale and grow.
Totally.
But having the right people in the room with the right alignment there and be supportive of that.
Yeah, it's critical. I think there has been many forks in roads. There's been pretty big forks in roads the last couple of years, right? I think, if you look at us as a business at Butcher's, Rolly Roti is the parent company. Thomas started with his wife, Yumi, as a food truck. Then we started doing a lot more co-man products, whether it be sous vide or broth. But, there was a fork in the road about 1.5 2 years ago where we said, hey, do we want to be a little of everything for everybody? Or do we want to be intentional about our future and where we want to be the best at? So, we kickstarted ourselves down this path of saying, hey, we want to be the very best. We want to be the very best bone broth company out there for fresh, that when you open your bottle, you want consistency to see that jiggle, right? And that's what we're that's kind of our North Star. I think everything else kind of supports that.
So I do have a question. I'm kind of thinking about how people, especially more now, like to know exactly where their food's coming from and
Mm-hmm.
kind of the process. What exactly is the process when you're getting into these big box stores? What is the process that happens? Like, do they reach out to you? Do you reach out to them or like apply? I'm sure there's such a long list of people trying to get on shelves. How does that all look?
Yeah, I guess it's traditionally bi-directional. I think probably one more direction is if you're a hungry emerging brand, you go out there and you try to open some doors, right? I think what's helped us tremendously the past year and a half or so is just there's a larger awareness of bone broth as a category, which is helpful, but just the more bigger attraction of understanding that fresh is best. And we're seeing those intersections happening in a big way. So, when you talk to Sam, our head of sales, it's never hard to kind of open a door just to have a conversation. I think what we're finding is now we're having a lot of inbound, which is kind of interesting. Like, I think about 2 weeks ago, I got this email come in from, a fairly large, 150, 200 store buyer for the meat set. And they're like, oh, yeah, tell me more about it. Like, do you distribute through this or can you go direct? It just really fantastic to see a lot of inbound come in, more so to the last couple of years, which is kind
Totally.
of when you think about brands, it's a question, right? It's like, I think if you're a small startup, which we try to think of ourselves just because how entrepreneurial we are, you're always going to go out there and hunt, right? You're just going to try to open as many doors as possible. At the same time, you also have to balance kind of, can you create tailwinds for the rest of your team so that when they are presented the opportunity, the buyers actually know you already because of great marketing. Like, people are aware of your brand, they're aware of the stories, they're aware of the goodness of your product, that it's in these other places that are just doing so well.
Right.
That's awesome. I wanted to ask too, like, especially for our crowd, it's kind of aligned to what we are just speaking about. But when we see these small brands that we love and trust kind of go mainstream,
Mm.
it can be almost an immediate loss of trust sometimes, just based off what we've seen with companies being bought out, of course, like we just kind of talked about. But how do you guys address that internally and sort of safeguard yourselves from losing trust in customers when you do expand into these major retailers? And maybe it's a little easier now because the consumers are driving these brands into the bigger retail shops. But I'm just curious if you had any thoughts on that and how you guys handle that within the walls of Butcher's Bone Broth.
Hey, the great thing about us, like, we are not private equity backed, we are not VC backed. I
Yeah,
am amazed every single day. We are cash flowed 24 years ago from one single food truck that sold rotisserie chicken and potatoes,
I love that
and
story.
that's allowed us to just do things our own way. Honestly, like, if you think about it, who would start a company making a bone broth the way that we do? There's just nobody. If you look at the quality of ingredients and the amount of ingredients we put into the product, it's like, holy crap. Like, no, if I was a business person, I would just put a couple chicken wings, tons of water, and just boil it like crap, and then put in aseptic cartons and whatnot. Like, we do things the hard way,
Right.
which I think it has to do with our DNA. Like, Thomas didn't like wasting bones, right? It's just like, shoot, like, if we're using it for or do food service and we end it with tens of thousands of bones, like, why throw it away? Like, could I even repurpose this to do something better? And history has showed, like, civilizations and cultures have. So why couldn't we do the same? But what amazed me when I go into the factory, and you two should come sometime as well. You
I'd
just
love to
look
come
at
see
the
it.
amount.
Awesome.
If you look at the amount of product we put into, our tanks and whatnot, and the quality of it, it would just amaze you compared to, like, you go to Swanson's, you go to Campbell's, you go to, these other ones where it pours like water. There's a reason why things pour out like water, right? It's because they're, probably high heat treated. There's probably not a lot of things outside of water that are being cooked with it. Therefore, it doesn't gel like gelatin. Even if you put it in the fridge, it won't gel like gelatin.
Right.
So, it's just good marketing, I guess a lot of them have.
Yeah, yeah. Diluted. That's even outside of food. I've noticed that happens a lot in skincare too, where like water
Oh,
is the
yeah.
first ingredient, and I'm like, no.
Yep.
Right.
Have you ever had like a really surprising moment when you have been working with these stores? Like, was there anything that you were not expecting?
This is a tough business for brands, especially emerging ones. Like, everybody talks about how tough it is for, I mean, like Pepsi, Coke, all these other ones. Like I was reading in the paper maybe a year ago, like inflation, and because of it, these brands, these big brands like Pepsi Cola had to raise their prices a little, and then the retailers started pulling them off the stores and whatnot. And you kind of you feel bad, but you really don't for Coke and whatnot.
Yeah, no,
um,
definitely not. For
We'll
many reasons.
we'll be honest about it here.
yeah, I would say a lot of those things happen to smaller brands, which
Yeah.
people don't hear or can't appreciate because they don't get to see the light of day of it. We like to think that brands have strong retail partners and those are meaningful partnerships. In business, like it's business is business in many ways. Like you might have some small and pop retailers, like we have some like Berkeley Bowl that we started with, that where the relationship is really tight, right? And there's others where we're just a number, right?
Yeah.
That and the only reason why we're there is like, holy crap, your retail velocity is high, you're gaining market share, and you're bringing people to our stores, which is great.
Yeah.
But there's things that I'm trying to figure out how to wordsmith this in my head, just whatever. But if I were just to be honest with your listeners, like emerging brands go through shady stuff because a lot of buyers, they're just people working at that store as a buyers, and they get judged by margins and whatnot, and they want to compress those as much as possible. They'll compress it if it was Coke, and they'll compress it just like a smaller company. And if there's other ways they can find to grind you down so that they can save extra buck, even though it might not get back to the end consumer, they'll do it. Like there's ridiculous stuff, right? And maybe I'm opening up a can of worms, and maybe you'll, and this is maybe the good stuff for publicity, right?
I love where this is going, right? Because that's what our listener base is interested in.
There's really BS stuff out there, right? Like certain retailers have certain programs that are ridiculous. There's these everyday low pricing models where they say, hey, we'll keep your price everyday low, but you have to give us a certain price for that, like a fee. And that's kind of ridiculous. Like, why do I have to give you margin protection for that to happen in the first place?
Right.
There's other brands out there, like retailers, that say, hey, your stuff is doing really, really well. Can we take it off the shelf and put it underneath our brand name? Or like, WTF, like what makes you think that you have the right to understand our formula and treat it the right way and leverage our like IP? Like why would we want to do that? And why do we think that you, the steward of that recipe, could do it the same way? You would probably just want to cut the cost and put just one chicken wing in it, right? Like, so
yeah, this
is like the stuff that you like probably isn't told, right? Like to many folks. I mean, there's other BS stuff as well. There's a whole supply chain, right? There's some big beasts out there that handle direct, like if you're not doing direct to consumer, there's only two national ones that handle it, KeHE and Unify, right? I think if you talk to many emerging brands out there, they aren't the greatest partners out there, whether that's deductions that hit you left and right. I mean, big companies like Coke, Nestle, they have teams that can fight deductions, right? You're talking about a small mom and pop shop that is trying to be efficient to provide the best value to the end consumer. It takes a lot of work to kind of like fight these and be smart with them. So sorry, I'm just like, I'm complaining quite a bit, but
no,
not at all.
Be honest to your listeners that it's not easy to do what we do. We take it for granted. It's even harder to be in a place like California where we are manufacturing California, which actually, if people look into it, it's really hard to be a manufacturer in California for whatever reasons, right? Whether it's the cost of living, whether it's like, there's a reason why there are a plethora of billboard lawyers that you probably won't see in the middle of the country or even, different parts of the country, but you see tons of them over here for whatever claims, whatever. So, it's not easy, but we figure out how to make it work. Partly because like, I don't know, Thomas and the team are just so passionate about what we do. You also notice, Marguerite, like when you go to Whole Foods or whenever you buy us, there's only 3 SKUs, right? Have. When you study other brands like Hell and Fire, there's like, I think, 36, 40 SKUs. I think there's something to be said of less is more, because once you have like, we talked about it earlier, we want to be the best at certain things. It's hard to be the best at 40, 50 things. But if I know I can be the best at like 2, 3 things, we have confidence we can deliver that to the end consumer in a way that's consistent and something that they would love.
I agree. And that's so funny you say that. I mean, obviously different, but like I feel like that's a lesson that I'm learning right now is you can't be a jack of all trades. You just have to focus on a couple things so you can do really, really well at those things rather
Yep.
than at everything else, at everything. So yeah.
Yeah. So how many people are actually working at Butcher's Bone Broth? I don't think you mentioned that.
We're plus or minus somewhere in the 100 range.
Okay.
And the bulk majority are going to be more on the production side, just given that we are vertically integrated manufacturing. But I would say the last 18 months or so, we've added quite a bit on the office side, just so that we're effectively balancing growth on the awareness, customer facing roles, and other shared services roles as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do have a question too, kind of back to what we were just talking about for a second on being on the shelves. I'm pretty sure I saw this from Shark Tank or something, but you guys or any brands, you have to pay like a fee to be, especially in the refrigerated section, right?
Yeah, I mean that's the crazy stuff, right? That's again, these slotting fees are killers for certain brands. We've recently made the decision that if it's going to require slotting, we're no longer going to participate.
Yeah.
And we drew a line in the sand and says, hey, like those dollars. I mean, like why I guess again, why are retailers asking for slotting dollars? Why are they asking for everyday low price guarantees? I mean,
Right.
it's basically trying to figure out ways to pocket more money for themselves in some ways. And that's not good necessarily for brands like us to sustain and keep a price that's like reasonable. I would hate for our prices to jack up enough, like 20, 50%, whatever. Like we've only made one price increase in 10 years, right? And that's after I joined and tried to convince Thomas that we can no longer take these compressed margins when people are asking for slotting, asking for XYZ.
Right.
But yeah, slotting fees are real. It's something that we aren't going to participate in. We think those dollars are probably meant better to funnel back to the end product to ensure quality, if not for more awareness for end consumers.
I love that. I'm so happy that you are putting a boundary there because more brands that do that, that's going to make a difference. Because everybody's trying to be successful at what they're doing. I grew up in a family of manufacturing, totally different industry, but I kind of understand a lot of that too, how those relationships can go and what the retailers are going to do. Some of it's just kind of crazy.
Yeah, I'll illuminate this with a story, brief one. We had one retailer take pocket slotting fees in the past, only to remove us after 6 months to get slotting dollars from somebody else, and then offered then to bring us back. And we're like, holy crap. So if you look at all the other regions of your banner, we're performing at the same level, if not better. And the only reason you're doing this is basically to pocket 2 slotting dollars in a year for the same slot and then bring us back in. And I was like, oh my God, this is kind of the dirty business that goes on behind the scenes. And yeah, I don't think
that's
shoppers would be happy with that either, that behavior.
I'm glad I'm not either. Like, that's why I'm glad that you're actually setting that boundary, not just like eating it, because there's like a ton of stores here, big stores that are the opportunities to be in. Retailers are also very lucky to have you because consumers do want 3 ingredient products and healthy, organic, and quality products. So if they're not going to work with the brands right, the consumers aren't going to go there eventually if they know.
Yeah.
So
totally. Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly, partly because I don't know, I go back, like the dollars they ask to get slotted in just is so ridiculous that they have to realize, and I think some of them are, where if your brand becomes something so symbolic of the identity of somebody that they want to be, and then have that tangentially relate to them going into the doors of a certain retailer, that's worth something in a big way, right? So yeah, I would say like it's partly educating buyers that they can't just treat every brand the same way. When the movement is toward fresh and natural, you need to really lean in and say, no, you are offering something that's differentiated that my buyers really want and care about. And yeah, I might need slotting for like a new bag of quote unquote better for you chips or whatever. But you're doing like fresh bone broth the traditional way, and this is what people really, really want. Like, yeah, we don't have to go through this kind of song and dance about slotting fees.
right.
Right.
And I do have a question too. Like, because you guys are the only fresh bone broth that I've seen. And I know the shelf stable bone broth, I've literally opened up those boxes and had spoiled bone broth. One of my friends always tells me, she's like, yeah, that happened to her. She opened up a very popular brand of bone broth and it was bad and she didn't realize it. And her child was drinking it. And now he will not touch bone broth because of that
Oh,
experience. And
yep.
but I was curious, isn't there something that also is with the freezer bone broth? Doesn't it degrade the nutrients or something like that? I could be wrong, but I thought I read something like that.
I mean, so I'm not the scientist, but from what I understand from our R&D folks and Thomas as well, because he's, has some good experience, the the molecular strands of collagen just aren't as tight because when you freeze, they pull out together. So when you get it later on, it just doesn't jiggle, right? So if I were to prioritize for consumer what that means, it's like if you had to make a choice, fresh is always the best. Frozen, I guess, is all right. Fresh before, and then shelf stable will probably be the last choice I would do, partly because actually I don't even want to shit on other bone broth companies. It's like any company, any brands that do more shelf stable stuff, like just look at the ingredient list. If you can't pronounce it, if they're putting something that's like questionable, yeast this or gum that, like is that good for me organically, right? And like go back to my daughter, like she asked me something today. It's like, oh, does that include chemicals? And if so, then I don't want it. I'm like, good. I'm glad you
Great
teach you that at
question.
school.
Good for her.
I love that too. Our son is starting to talk crap about Chick-fil-A.
He attacked Chick-fil-A and McDonald's yesterday. It was hilarious.
Well,
We should get the two of them on a show together and have them talk about ingredients.
hey, that would be amazing. It'd be fascinating for your demographics. Imagine two kids talking and educating each other in that population. That'd be great.
That would be amazing.
That would be really good.
But that also, so that's like when you think about those other brands, maybe they're putting those different products in there, kind of goes along what you say a lot is greenwashing, right?
Yep.
So there's like a pretty fine line between good marketing and actual quality and, being seriously organic and having good ingredients and everything like that. So what are your thoughts on that line between good marketing and using statements maybe that are, they're not approved, but they don't need to be approved, and you can kind of say what you want, unregulated. That's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
To appear that way when you have a better product like yours on the shelf that is truly organic and non-toxic.
I just feel so bad for consumers just in general part because it makes it so hard to find out what's real or not.
Yeah.
Right. Just because of there's so much marketing that goes to defend something that's bad and just to build it up to say, hey, we're not bad. And if you just use common sense, it's like, no, that wouldn't be good. That's why,
right,
to us, it's kind of the reason why we've taken so long to kind of hit kind of critical mass. Like it's product market fit. And I think when you look at the business starting, well, not the business, the broth starting about a decade ago, marketing dollars was not top of his mind like any other big company out there. So
they have more that if you build it, they will come mindset.
I like that better.
Yeah, I do too.
He built it, and then people started wanting it more and more. Like it was basically just like he brought in these. He canned it him, or he filled it up himself. I remember he was telling me he brought it to Berkeley Bowl and gave it a chance, and then all of a sudden he got a call back after a couple of days from the buyers like, "Oh, can you give me more of that?" I was like, "What do you mean?" It's like, "Yeah, it sold out already," and he's like, "Oh, okay." So he basically started building a following just organically without any marketing, and that's the beauty of it. Because once you're hooked, once you understand the jiggle, that quality, that collagen, and everything good inside of it, you're going to come back because you know this better. The best thing that we are amazed and proud about was I think it was either on TikTok or Instagram where somebody mentioned kind of like our broth or just broth in general. And then some user said, "Oh, look at this jiggles." And then these other folks are like, "Oh, like ew, jiggles." And then all of a sudden you had these like random people who actually had our broth. They're like, "No, you're mistaken. Like the jiggle is all the good stuff." And they're like, "Oh my God." So I've been having like Kettle on Fire or Broth or these other ones for so long. And I feel cheated because it's just like water. Right.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
part of it is just let the product speak for itself. Like if you had to do a blind taste test, I would be curious of that. If you're a shopper in category, simply just like buy a couple of them, put it in whatever, taste it, do a self taste test for with your family and see what comes out of it, right? And then you can read behind what's the label and whatnot. But yeah, I feel because I deal with this not just like for bone broth, right? I think even for my kids, like shoot, like there's stuff in there. Like I want them to be healthy and have good habits, but if I can teach them how to think about it first, that's why I go back to Maya. She's like 8 years old. She can read. I'm like, that's a good thing, right? Leverage that as a tool where she can actually learn about what she's putting in her body.
And it's just another way to kind of set your kids up, and then also another generation to kind of go back to what Carl always says is back to basics, like
Yep.
go back to real food and real nutrition, and instead of all this crazy stuff that has ended up on our shelves that are just chemicals.
Yeah, the things that we've accepted as a people is tough, and it's tough to overcome. And that's why we are here trying to create awareness and spotlight good brands like yourselves and others so that we can go out and support. Because like we were talking about Thomas, starting, if you build it, they will come. Most companies or a lot of companies can't survive that period, right? Until that awareness is created. So now we've got all these platforms and different avenues to go ahead and get it out there, and people are paying more attention. And personally, I'm absolutely loving it.
Yeah.
Going back to a simplified food has cured some of my illnesses. And so I'm a big fan, proponent, and I'll get out there and tell anyone that wants to hear, these are the types of foods you need to be eating if you want to be healthy. And 90% of the stuff that you think is food, you need to get rid of it.
Yeah. It's true.
So,
he actually went on the carnivore diet and totally cleaned off his gut. He took the gut health testing, and the doctor was like, what? I've like never seen anyone's gut so clean before. And it was 9 months of carnivore.
That's just a testament though to being able to see less than a handful of ingredients, right? Yep. And being able to understand what they are and know that it's just coming naturally is so good for your body.
One thing too I love about bone broth, I mean, even take away the nutrient density of it, I think warming foods are better for us. Well, especially for women. I don't really know so much about for men, but for women, like warming foods are better for our bodies, especially when it's that time of month or like if you're sick or something. So even that alone, I think is just like really cozy.
Yep. Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting as well because typically one of the questions we get from buyers, retailers, like the education is like, hey, like, are you a seasonal product? Is it only into winters? And certainly, if you look at bone broth as a category, it's cyclical. I would say, the data that I have an opportunity to see compared to other brands is, if you go to a center store and buy traditional, like, I don't know, ambient, shelf-stable bone broth, I would bet most of them, their demand cycle is also like very peaks and valleys where you get like just when it's cold, people drink it. Ours is interesting. That's happened recently where we're seeing, we'll still get those peaks and valleys for sure, but the peaks of our valleys are pretty healthy. And I think that speaks to more of that everyday consumer who just realizes that it's not about drinking in December. It's really about drinking it every morning or later in the evening. It's like every day. So that's been really helpful for us as we kind of start educating people, not just about bone broth, but, fresh bone broth and what we can offer that's a little different.
Yeah. Well, it's also, it can replace a coffee. Coffee a lot of times isn't even just needed for caffeine. A lot of people just drink it because they want that warm morning drink.
Yep.
And also, in the summertime, my argument for that would be is you are typically not getting as much sleep. You're kind of out and about, maybe drinking more or eating crappier. So bone broth kind of replenishes you and brings you back down and centers you a little bit.
Yeah.
So there's your commercial.
Great PR right here. But that's actually a question I want to ask is like, what kind of feedback do you get from customers? Is it mostly that it tastes good, or do you get a lot of feedback that it makes me feel healthier, more invigorated, and maybe even helps me, cure any ailments it might have? Yeah.
So I'll give you a wide variety just because I get the chance to see all the emails come in. But I'll give you a couple stories. So Thomas and I were having breakfast with actually another CEO of a pretty large, like $3-5 billion like conglomerate of some sorts, and he sings praises about our broth that uses us in a different way. He doesn't drink it and replaces coffee. He does it with coffee. So he puts like half a bottle, and we're like, why do you do this? And he's like, well, because it satiates me. Like I drink coffee to wake me up, but at the same time, like I don't want to have to nibble and eat like breakfast and all stuff. I'm have like intermittent fasting, so this really tides me over for to lunch. That's one use case that we've heard a couple times.
That's a great idea. That fits my lifestyle really well. I don't usually like to eat in the morning, but I love having my coffee. A lot of it's just for that warm drink feel.
Yeah, and that probably would stabilize hormones too, because you never want to drink coffee on an empty stomach.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's the protein with it as well. So it's like it's a good win or interesting hack. And I was like, I get it. I mean, this CEO wakes up at like 3:30 in the morning, I think. So needs a coffee and broth. We've heard some other ones that are just insane. I wouldn't say insane. There's other where this might get too. I don't know. I'm just gonna say it. So
go for it.
This woman started using our bone broth, and he's like, "Oh my god! Like I see hair growing on my body that I never had before. I swear it's because of your bone broth." Or like my hair's gotten thicker, but I have hair on my arms a lot more. Like, trust me, like it's because of your product.
Your body's alive.
Right? Yeah, and then people always say the energy levels. Like I told you that case with somebody with cancer. That's certainly the case. But we get people who use our bone broth as electrolyte for their cats and dogs, which is crazy. Somebody wrote in, my cat was sick. She's 16 years old. We thought she was going to pass away. Couldn't take anything down, and served your bone broth, and it seems like electrolytes. Now she feels like she's like 2-3 years old. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool as well.
Yeah,
that's awesome. There you go. There's a new SKU and a new Target out there, right? The Butcher's Bone Broth Pet Edition.
Well, I actually just gave our dog bone broth the other night, but it was like one specifically for pets. I didn't even think about Butcher's Bone Broth. I should try that.
Yeah,
right.
We can make our cups together.
The ingredients are fine for animals, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, same thing. Like that's the beauty. Like when you think about pets and even your kids, you probably want the same quality, which is less is more, right?
And even kids, I know a really good way for me to get my daughter to drink it is the hot chocolate, which has become pretty popular.
Yep.
I think that's delicious because I can't even taste the bone broth in that. It's delicious.
Yeah. Our we have an intern this summer, and she is currently I think her and her marketing manager were playing around with this bone broth margarita, and I was like, okay, that's a totally different demographic because that's not. I mean, I don't drink alcohol or margaritas as much, but the bone broth. Get your protein in while you get your booze on.
Yeah.
How cool would it be to see that at a staple at every bar, right? Or having people pull it out of their bag to add a little bone broth to their drinks.
Yes. Yeah. Totally. Okay. So I have a fun little game. It's just basically rapid fire.
Okay.
This is fun. So, okay. What's always in your refrigerator right now?
Oh, I mean, bone broth. I mean,
I figured.
Sorry.
Okay. One thing that you haven't, like from a crunchy standpoint, what is one thing that you kind of want to swap, but you just haven't yet?
What do I want to swap out?
Yeah. For a better version.
Do have habits that are hard to break.
Yeah.
This is hard, but I know like a category. I think sauces are one of them. Like if you add like a condiment or whatever to some things you eat, like let's say sweet potato fries that you air fry for your kids, and you get all these different sauces. They're tasty, right, in some ways, but like you look in the backpack, there's stuff in it, and then so I like sauces, so like I just need to be more disciplined in just with my kids, just choosing whatever the best ones are.
Yeah.
That's a really good one.
That is a good one because so many people love their condiments. I will say I just started maybe 6 months ago, started playing around and kind of making my own real quick because it's really fast. And like honey mustard's a really easy one. But even so, I'm still working on ketchup. I can't get a perfect ketchup, but I know mayonnaise is pretty easy too. Those are really basic ones, but they have taken me like 5 minutes.
Yep.
I even copied a really good white sauce for chicken teriyaki and stuff. And
that was actually, that was delicious.
Yeah. And then this is from a Lebanese restaurant. I love their garlic whip, and I made it and it tastes exactly like it. Yeah. And it's just so easy.
I think sauces is a good one. It's very hard to overcome like what you think it should taste like.
Yeah.
Right. So you get a healthier brand or you make your own and it tastes a little different. You're like, okay, well, that's not French fries and ketchup anymore. But once you just kind of get rid of that idea, it's fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I know. I'm always like, oh, this tastes so good. But then I forget I've been acquiring my taste for like 20 years. So people are like, this does not taste exactly like that. And I'm like, yes, it does. Okay. What is a clean brand that you love that's not Butcher's?
So I have a health regimen myself. So I'll just tell you, I use tart cherry juice to help with a couple of reasons. One is that it helps me sleep, I guess, a little in the evening, but really if I do workouts, it's really good for your muscles, right? In terms of recovery. Um, there's a couple brands out there. I'll be surprised. Like there's Lakewood, there's Knutsford, there's some private labels from Walmart and Trader Joe's. I, I'm surprised actually. I think the TJ's one is the best so far. That's not branded, and the reason why is there's sediments on the very bottom compared to the other ones, which I'm confused with. But yeah, that's one I liked a lot. And then what's another brand that's low? I like Honey from time to time when I get it, but it's only I find that honey is best hyper local because just
Oh yeah.
because how they pollinate. So there's some that like the Bay Area Honey Company that you can get locally at Sprouts, for example. Yeah, I like kind of local honey.
Yeah. I always go for local honey too, except there is one. Do you know who Paul Salandino is?
No.
I feel like I bring him up a lot on podcasts.
Yeah.
He's a carnivore guy, but he has a brand. It's called Lineage Provisions.
Yeah.
And they're not in stores. I think you could just directly get it from his site, but they have a really good honey. He's very specific, so it's tested for like glyphosate and everything. That's the only one I will get that's not local. Or Beekeeper's Natural Super Honey I will get too. But other than that, I'm like all local.
Yep.
Okay. So what is a wellness trend that you think is like genuinely here to stay?
Going back to natural. That's the simplest. That's the wave that I've noticed, and I think it's only going to improve more and more. But I pause a little because I think one of the things that could stop it or slow it down is, the last decade or so, you look at our economics, like you look at the stock market's gone up, right? So some parts of the population are able to afford it. I do wonder if there is a recession, if we were actually in a K-shaped economy, which some parts of the population aren't doing as well. Like, would people still pay for back to natural products if they're done the right way versus something that is the same category but is ultra processed? But currently, right now, the wellness trend is still going strong.
We always say too, and I know every family is different, but we're always like, investing in your health with natural products is a lot cheaper than investing in cancer treatments.
Totally. 100%.
Man, I got to get that shirt that just says back to natural. That's like my favorite slogan.
Yes. What do you think? Is there any wellness trend that you think is overhyped?
Carl, you asked me that question about greenwashing. And what bugs me is like, I think I was at Costco the other day. And I saw like protein cereal, and I was like, "What the fuck?" I mean, like everything's trying to slap on protein, right? And it's becomes much more of a buzzword than the intent of like what it includes. And everybody, many of your speakers probably have mentioned it. Like, the mass audience of population in the U.S., we get a fair amount of protein already, but the thought of like more is one, and that you can just slap on protein on everything, right? Like, you think about like the carnivore diet, it's great, it cleans the body, but like what if I connected carnivore diet protein and then all of a sudden the cereal and the Cheerios that my kids eat or would eat or whatever, like I'm not sure if I connect the dots there, right? So some of that parts that I'm not necessarily sold on.
I hear you on that. I agree. I actually saw someone else said that, and it resonated with me too. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So do you have any other questions, Dan?
What keeps you grounded?
So having good, strong upbringing certainly helps. With like parents have raised us in a pretty humble way, partly just because they had to, because they weren't like rich or anything. I think having family probably is a big part. I think having a regimen of some sorts that you can stick to, I think just really grounds you. Realizing what you want to do with your life in some strange way. Like I'm in like my 40s now. I'm not sure if this is midlife crisis. I mean, this is kind of maybe goes to your podcast. Like, it's not just about making money, it's about making impact. And where you can see yourself making impact kind of feeds the soul and hopefully makes you live a richer life. Like, and not financially, it's like a richer, meaningful, high quality life. So I don't know, some kind of perspective from that kind of keeps me grounded, because then it's like you're working towards something, but that means it's not just what you achieve, but how you go about it. And that matters to me.
Yeah, beautifully said. I mean, we're in the same spot. You early 40s here. We just had kids starting 5 years ago. And our perspective has changed, right? It's no longer about climbing the ladder and making as much as you can. It's more about that impact and sharing in the community and just having those great relationships to really enrich your life.
Yep.
That's what it's all
100%.
about.
Yeah. So where can everyone find you?
If you want to find out more about our brand, it's just butchers.co. If you're interested in finding about us, you can also find us on Instagram, TikTok under Butchers Bone Broth. If you want to find me on LinkedIn. It's just literally Greg Lok, Lok spelled L-O-K. And if you want to find our products, we're in Whole Foods and Sprouts nationally. We're in Costco rotations throughout the year. Launching Hy-Vee. We're in all super targets right now and hopefully expanding to a lot more. And a couple of the great other retailers.
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks for doing what you guys do. Yeah, back to natural is the way it should be. So if there's any way we can unite forces to do something more powerful, just let us know.
All right. Well, thank you. Thanks for your time. Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank
you guys
you.
have a good one. Talk to you later.
You too. Take care.
Bye.
Thanks so much for listening. If you'd like to follow along with us, you can find us on Instagram at CrunchyPod and at Unapologetically Crunchy. We have the same handles on TikTok too. And check out our websites at crunchypod.com and unapologeticallycrunchy.com. And if you have some tips and tricks you'd like to share with us, feel free to DM us or contact us on the website. And one more thing, if you love our podcast, please consider sharing with every single person you know who would love it. And leave us a review. Oh, and you can tell them to leave a review too. We are so beyond grateful for your support. Thank you so much. Peace, love, and crunch.